Twilight's Nightmare, Chapter 12, Connections and Consequences. The sound of Gray's squeals endlessly scribing and the rustle of scrolls moving filled Twilight with nostalgia. A sad smile crossed her face. All of that time from before, she truly knew what friendship was. All of that time, when all she wanted was to be left alone, free to read in peace. Now that she had it, all she wanted was the distractions to come back. Rainbow crashing through the window, Pinky and her surprise parties.
If only I could walk out the front door and see my friends,
she wishfully thought. She glanced up, looking for dreams. She craved being enclosed in those perfect wings once more, but no. She wasn't back yet. She had left to prepare a bath for her, and she had to admit that just the thought of it seemed divine. Her mind thought back to the many spa trips that she shared with the girls. Was this what it would be like in a few hundred years? Her, all alone? Missing her friends, her family?
No. I will not believe that is Harmony's plan for me.
Setting aside her dark contemplations, Twilight slowly looked around the Grand Golden Oaks library, taking it all in. Her library was perfect. Full of more books than she could count, every detail as if it was made just for her. She let out a quiet laugh.
A whole plane of existence. Just for me.
She ran a hoof over the floor, listening to the sound and feeling the texture of the wood. Everything felt real. Not a single detectable fault.
What is Cadence's bastion like? And why did No Pony tell me that I had one? How many more surprises am I gonna find out now that I'm an alicorn?
She mused, face twisting to a frown. Looking at the doors, her friends, the parts that Celestia locked away and the others, the small door with just the star, she guessed, was something to do with the original Twilight. Her attention focused on the last two. Why would she have a wing of her library dedicated to Luna? If what Dream said was true, that would mean that she has a connection with Luna. Her eyes traveled back to her friend's doors. Could she use these connections to send messages? Could she scry on her friends and check on how they were doing? Could she use her magic and bring them here?
A group hug would be perfect right about now,
Twilight said to No Pony. Her eyes fixed on the most troubling door and narrowed, the symbol of her mark covered by that of the nightmare.
What does it mean? Was I ever taken over by the nightmare? Or is that one of the memories that Celestia hid from me?
After her bath, she would have a lot of reading to do, and when her magic recovered, it would be time to experiment. Just the thought of all she could learn sent a shiver of anticipation through her. A sudden motion behind the seal caught her eye. It looked like there was a little more fresh blood on the chains, and she looked over at Gray. She wasn't really much of a conversationalist, apparently, being unable to talk. Twilight glanced at the blood.
Feeling sorry for myself achieves nothing,
she berated herself. It took no time to decide to help, and only moments to form a plan of action. Briefly pausing at the implications of what she was going to attempt, she shrugged. It was her mind. She could do what she wished, no form-filling required before hoof. So she carefully checked her body, muscle by muscle, slowly stretching, twisting, rotating herself, and she concluded that she was good for limited activities. She dragged herself to her hooves, still weak, but moving, and she smiled. Seeking out and finding some wood that was not part of the tree itself, she concluded that a small table was her best option. She lit her horn and set to work. She would be using simple, low-powered spells she honestly never thought she would use again.
Or am I using them for the first time?
Twilight thought as her eyes flicked to the patchwork toy. What would her parents think? What would Shining think? Her eyes fixed on the white book.
Are my parents my grandparents?
She was going to have a lot of talks with a lot of ponies. Celestia would know, but did she dare confront her? A week ago, the thought that under some definitions, Celestia was her mother would have filled her heart with joy. Now she just felt betrayed and scared.
What will the princess do if she finds out that I know? let alone the fact that I practically gave my body away.
Twilight shook her head, getting back to her self-appointed task. She would have enough time to work the rest out later. She cut, shaped, and remade it into a wooden tunnel. It was about, large enough for books to be passed through. Any larger, and she doubted that she could make this work. She might be an alicorn, but she doubted she was in the same league as Celestia, yet. So, she would just have to be smart about it.
Now, if I mix this strengthening array with parts of the shield sapping spell, reconfigure it to work versus seals, now to specialize it against solar, astral, and fire aspected magic. Thank you, Starlight. Who knew our weekly magic duels would prove useful here?
Aiming her horn at her new creation, Twilight fired a thin beam of magic. It was an ingenious modification of a surface cleaning spell to turn it into a disintegration beam.
When did I come up with this?
She briefly pondered. With long practiced aim and control, she danced the beam over the wooden surface, etching arcane runes in intricate patterns. Smiling as she worked, Twilight began to hum Dream's lullaby. The tune and working towards an objective did wonders to lift her mood.
And done.
With a flourish, Twilight set her creation spinning in her magical aura. She walked to Gray's seal, her newly constructed gift held in her magic. Gray looked up at her, the quills falling still in the air for a moment, and Twilight met her intense eyes and tried not to be overwhelmed by the bitterness she saw within, and she smiled in greeting.
This is for you. You shouldn't have to hurt yourself just for helping me.
Twilight moved the wood towards the chains with her magenta magic. Gray pointed to her horn with a hoof and shook her head. Twilight stopped, eyes wide. Gray's foreleg was made of wood. It was painted to match her coat color perfectly. At this range, there was no mistaking it for anything other than a prosthetic. Twilight looked at her own foreleg, her stolen foreleg. She could feel her body start to tremble.
No, I will not break down. I have a job to do,
she demanded of herself. Deliberately taking a breath and recalling Dream's lullaby, she stilled her body. Twilight looked back up.
So, no magic touching the seal?
Gray nodded, so she set to work without her magic. Taking the wooden tunnel in her front hooves, Twilight reared up. Using her wings for balance, she moved closer. Twilight started to force it between the chains, twisting it this way and that, and the runes glowed, taking in the golden energy, but only barely loosened the chains. It felt like she was pushing Tom without the benefit of her Earth Pony might. Her limbs burned, her back legs were really not happy about supporting so much of her weight, let alone pushing something through the seal. Her efforts were spreading the chains apart just by the smallest margin. She would do this. She had stood against every challenge put in front of her. This would not stop her. A growled curse escaped her as she pushed harder. Something twisted inside of her, power rushing into her straining muscles, invigorating them. The magically reinforced wood creaked under the increased grip, and she used all of her might, and she could feel the floor crack under her rear hooves. The tunnel suddenly slipped forward, and the sharp blades on the chains bit into her flesh. She hissed in pain, but pressed on. It was so close, just a little bit more and she would be done. Gray reached into the seal, fresh cuts causing her blood to mix with Twilight's. Gray grabbed the chains, prying them apart if only a little. With a final lurch, it was done. No longer needed, the strange power reinforcing her faded. Twilight slumped, dropping tiredly back to all fours. She dearly hoped the fresh blood deposits were the last either of them would have to pay. Her eyes glanced at the multiple cuts on her forelegs. It was still fascinating to watch her flesh perfectly knit itself back together.
Well, if only it would clean the blood from my coat too.
The passageway now in place, Gray took a step back and nodded. She raised a hoof, tracing the shape of a smile over her expressionless face. Twilight's answering smile was radiant as warmth filled her chest. It was helping ponies again. She half expected her mark to glow, signifying another job well done, another mission complete. The sound of hooves clapping behind her caught her attention. Twilight, who was startled, quickly looked, only to be caught up in a surprise hug by Dreams' warm wings.
Oh, my little star,
Dreams said, nuzzling her, a beautiful, joyful smile on her muzzle. Twilight blushed, and the hug was nice. It added to the growing warmth inside of her. Everything was better with Dreams' wings around her. Gray waved before heading back to her task, some of the bitterness in her eyes missing. Dreams did a double take.
So, that is what she looks like when she's happy.
Twilight laughed. For this moment at least, she was happy. She pressed against Dreams' body, returning the embrace.
The bath's ready. It's a bit of a walk to get there, so...
Dreams smiled mischievously as her silver aura lifted Twilight.
Hey, the water will be cold by the time we get there if I let you walk.
Dreams placed Twilight on her back, legs hanging down either side of her body.
I'm not a foal. You're hurt. Every pony needs help when they are recovering, and you miss little elements of magic are no different.
Dreams said, sticking out her tongue. Seeing Dreams act like a foal was just too much. Twilight laughed.
Much better.
Dreams cantered off, heading towards the stairs. Feeling the motion of Dreams' muscles under her was a different experience than simply being carried in her magic. It was pleasant. Twilight regarded the door with Nightmare's mark atop her own. Shaking her head, she spoke.
Dreams, is there any way we can help Nova? She is down there, isn't she?
Twilight pointed a hoof at the floor. A growl came from below.
Nova can hear me?
Twilight thought. Dream, not seeming to have noticed the growl, answered.
No, I don't think so, not unless you can defeat Celestia's seal. What about cutting through the floor?
Dream shook her head.
No, that would just hurt you and damage your wellspring. As long as that door is there, there is no other way down to the basement. Knock 3 times if you can hear me,
Twilight said. Dream stopped walking and gave Twilight a puzzled look.
Who are you?
Dream jumped before looking down, puzzled.
Nova, do you remember the old telegram code?
Twilight said. A pattern of knocks followed.
Yes, we have communication!
Twilight cheered. If it were not for Dreams' wings holding her, Twilight would have jumped off her ride, performing a happy dance right then and there. Or fallen flat on her face, given how weak she was feeling.
Well, Miss Nova, Twilight here is going to have a bath. You can talk all you want later,
Dream said. Another series of knocks and a hungry growl came from below. Twilight blushed, her face felt like it was on fire, but she couldn't take her eyes off of Dreams, not with Nova's suggestions. Dreams started moving again, and Twilight now more aware of Dreams' attractive body and how the muscles felt moving beneath her.
Why did you have to point out just how perfect that she looks?
She thought as she relaxed against Dreams' warmth. The fatigue from helping Gray dragged her eyes closed.
If this is my prison, at least it has more company than the moon,
she thought as she let herself start to fall asleep to Dreams' warmth and comforting sense once more. She noticed Dreams' magic lifting something from the floor as they passed Rainbow's door. It looked like a screwed up bit of paper, but Twilight didn't care.
I can clean the library later,
she thought as rest claimed her. Twilight was clean, relaxed, and feeling worlds better. The warm scented water and Dreams' talented hooves had managed to work some life back into her body, removing all traces of blood from her coat. She wouldn't be doing the running of the leaves anytime soon, but she could freely move about. She just didn't want to at the moment. She let out a contented hum as she examined her bathroom. It was huge. The bath itself was fed by a heated waterfall and was large enough for at least 10 fully grown alicorns. Truth be told, it was more a pool than a bath. Other than the wood and natural stone decor that fitted the library so well, it would happily fit in Canterlot Palace.
Rarity would love this place,
Twilight thought, her mind lazily beginning to construct a spell to bring her here. She looked over to Dreams, who was lounging next to her. Dreams stretched out and smiled softly at Twilight.
So, you are back with us?
Dreams said with a cheeky smile.
Too comfy to words.
Twilight lowered herself in the water, relishing its warmth.
But it's time for a learn something,
Dreams teased. Twilight's ears immediately went erect, turning to focus on Dreams. Dreams lifted her hoof from the bath, an orb of water seemingly stuck to it.
There are a lot of things you have not been told about alicorns, my little star.
Twilight's eyes fixed on the orb. It was clearly not unicorn magic. She leaned closer to her, horn lighting with a few analytical spells. her eyes going wide as the results started to come in. Something was blocking her magical scan, well, no. Not blocking it, it was causing it to bend around the orb.
Boop,
Dream said, placing the orb on against the end of Twilight's muzzle. And Twilight scrunched her muzzle and pulled her head back, looking at the ripples going through the water.
is this just some effect, but...
Dreams laughed.
So, are you ready for your lesson?
Lesson? Just like that, Twilight's ears were upright and alert.
Here? Now?
Dreams nodded.
Yes, the water will be useful.
She tossed the orb into the air, catching it with the other hoof.
Well, I can't take notes here.
Twilight said, her eyes tracking the orb as her mind frantically tried to come to some conclusion on how this was even possible. And Twilight once more found her nose meeting with a water orb again. She could feel it. There was some sort of boundary around the water. It was magic of some type, but it wasn't unicorn, Pegasus, or even Earth Pony. Something about it felt familiar, but where had she encountered anything like this?
There are at least 5 types of ponies that make up an alicorn.
Then, Twilight remembered the magic felt similar to what she had experienced in the Crystal Empire. Her eyes went wide, and her hunger for knowledge apparent. She leaned in close, almost muzzle to muzzle to Dreams.
So, I'm part Thestral and Crystal Pony? That's right, my little star.
Dreams said, her only reaction a small smile. Twilight grinned. The praise felt intoxicating on its own, more so than Dreams' lovely scent.
Focus, Twilight, focus. There was learning to be done.
She would save thinking how sexy Dreams looked, or the fact they were so close that they were almost kissing, for later. She pulled back, sitting up on her haunches, looking at every part of the attentive student.
So, what features do alicorns have from these two?
Dreams raised the orb of water.
This is Crystal Pony magic. Think of it as an improvement of the grip field all ponies project from their hooves, just much more versatile. Crystal ponies have it flowing over their bodies, acting as armor. To harm them, you need to first shatter this protection. And, as you have seen from the water orb, it can be hard to get through it with magic. With practice, it can be used to cut solid matter and even catch spells.
Dreams pushed the orb of water towards Twilight.
Try and lift it with a single hoof.
And Twilight reached out with a hoof, placing it against the orb. She could feel the cooling sensation of the crystal magic. Her grasp seemed to just slide off it, just like the scanning spell had. And Twilight narrowed her eyes. She could feel this magic, so she could interact with it. Placing her hoof firmly against the orb, she reached for and pulled on this crystal magic. The orb imploded, water splashing everywhere. Twilight blinked and looked sheepish.
Not what I was expecting, but amazing progress, my little star. But I failed. Look at your hoof.
Dream nodded to the hoof. Twilight's hoof and lower leg were covered in shimmering magenta crystal. She flexed her leg, and everything moved correctly.
Wow. Once you have your crystal armor in place, it takes no effort, no concentration to maintain it. For a crystal pony, it regenerates on its own. For us alicorns, we have to deliberately reform it. So, the individual tribes have advantages over alicorns?
Twilight said, frowning at her hoof, shaking it.
More like they have a head start with their own abilities, and given they only have one, but they can spend more time to master it.
Twilight placed her front hoofs together and pulled on the crystal armor. The crystals dissolved into light flowing over the other hoof before reforming.
How do I get rid of this? Hold out your hoof.
Dreams instructed. Twilight complied and waited expectantly. A blur of motion and a substantial impact smashed into her hoof. The sound of shattering glass and the shards falling into the water. She was expecting pain. She was expecting something. The only thing she had felt was the impact, and her hoof being knocked back. Twilight looked up, seeing that Dreams had clearly struck her. She blinked, unsure what to say.
Until you have it mastered, you will probably have to smash it to be rid of it. Oh, well, that's a bit wasteful. And so is teleporting everywhere you could easily walk. I will have you know, I save at least 4 hours a week by reducing time travel using short-range teleportation. If you value your time over stockpiling your magic reserves, then yes, it is better. Is that why Celestia is so powerful? She just keeps saving her magic year after year, hardly using any of it.
Dreams nodded.
Yes, the more magic you try to force yourself to hold, the slower it will recover. On the other hoof, constantly using your power will strengthen your magic and allow you to recover faster. But it still pales against an alicorn who has been hoarding their magic for hundreds of years.
Twilight asked. Dreams nodded.
Shall we move on with the lesson? So, Thestrals? Yes, Thestrals. You should be able to freely swap between Pegasus and Thestral features. How do you think Luna can still have fangs, or have her eyes change when she is angry? Show me.
Dreams did. The shift happened slowly, her ears gained tufts, her eyes became slitted, and Twilight bit her lip, and she liked what she saw. This silver-maned beauty of the night was not a nightmare. She was a dark temptress in full glory. Despite to hide her reaction, Twilight grabbed Dreams by the shoulders and shouted, "Teach me!" She blinked before continuing in a bashful whisper.
Please?
Only taken back briefly, Dreams responded.
Of course, my little star. The Thestral magic is best left until you get a taste for it.
Dream put on a warm smile.
Your homework for this subject is to take the first step on your own. All you need to do is to channel a little of your alicorn power through your eyes. Then, try to force yourself to see in the dark. When things seem to brighten, you have succeeded and are ready to learn more.
Twilight raised her hoof as if in class.
So, how do I deliberately channel my alicorn power?
Twilight's eyes sparkling with interest. New magic and homework, things just kept getting better and better. Dreams frowned, though.
Yet another thing that she kept from you.
She smiled at Twilight with pride.
Then, you are truly amazing to be as powerful as you are, without knowing that.
She paused, taking on a thoughtful look.
What can you tell me about alicorn power? Well, not much.
Twilight shrugged, currently too focused on the lesson and her sexy teacher to even consider Celestia, withholding yet more things from her.
Only that it is the core contributor to what makes alicorns immortal. True, but it is so much more than that. Alicorn magic in the purest form does almost nothing other than make one seem impressive. Its true strength comes from combining with other types of magic. It arguments and strengthens whatever it is mixed with. Wait, so if I channel it into my horn when casting spells, it will amplify them?
Twilight said, settling back comfortably in the bath. Not being able to take notes was a pain, but the sheer luxury was more than making up for it. Dreams nodded.
Ever since your ascension, all your spells have been infused with just a trace of alicorn power. That little bit was enough to at least double their potency.
Twilight thought back to helping Gray. She closed her eyes and sent her senses inwards, seeking the core of the power that lent her strength. It was one of the first meditations Celestia had taught her. Her wellspring was still depleted and out of balance, but it was steadily healing. It took moments to find the 3 types of magic that she was used to. Her unicorn magic blazing like a magenta star. Her earth pony and Pegasus magic were almost lost against its brilliance. Looking around, she searched for something more. She found a few faint whispers of at least 3 other magics, but nothing matching what she was looking for, just a vast sea of empty space.
Wait. The space between!
She realized. All the space in her wellspring was no longer an empty void like when she was just a unicorn. No. Now it was all full with the faint previously ignored glow of her alicorn magic. It was binding all the different types of magic together, allowing them to coexist without destructively interfering with each other. Well, not only was that very interesting, but that was also quite lewd, too. I like it, though. Anyway, I'd like to give a very special thank you to my fantastic donators. Yoshi Super Saiyan 2, Peter Coulthard, Dresdon, Nicholas Springthorpe, Dospo, Rainbow Dash 1990, Runescythe 9852, David D. Sanchez, Dwight Cornell, Gaggy, Secret Moon, Orion Pax Kaiju, Starlight Glimmer, Trey, Pokekiller Zach, Soul Dragon, Dak Britton, Joe Pierce E, and Reno. Thank you all very much for watching this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.